Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the Curt trailer wiring harness on a 2018 Mazda CX-9. So here we have our 4-pole installed, and you can see it's got a nice dust cap protector, and that way it's nice and protected from any dirt, grime, or debris, and whenever we're ready to use our plug, it's right there. Now this customer has actually opted to use a bracket to mount it outside, but you can actually have this live inside your vehicle, and you just kind of coil it up in the back, and whenever you need to use it, you can simply drape it outside of your hatch, and it's going to be safe to use, and it's also going to stay nice and clean when you're not using it. Now, if you plan on towing a trailer at any point with your CX-9, this is going to be a requirement, and that way you can plug into the 4-pole on your trailer, allowing your lights on the trailer to see your running lights, your turn signals, as well as your brakes, and that's going to keep you safe and legal while having your trailer towed behind. Now this is a relatively easy install to do, and the system itself is really nice because it is module protected, meaning if there's any backfeed from the trailer, it's not going to fry any of your factory electronics and cause any damage for you. It also uses a factory style plug that simply plugs in, so this whole kit is essentially plug and play and can be done pretty quickly in your garage or in your driveway, however you need to do it. So a great part about this too is I'm going to walk you through every single step to get this installed on your vehicle. To begin our installation, I'm going to let you know that the plug is actually going to be inside the vehicle, kind of located behind the plastic. So we're going to need to open up our hatch. And a lot of the work that we're going to be doing on here is really just going to be removing some of this plastic here so we can gain access to that plug. So first thing, let's get our seats folded down here. So the plug does live here in the passenger side, and instead of just pulling this plastic off, there's going to be a few steps that we'll need to do to gain access to that. And the first one here, we're going to remove this tray as well as this underbody tray. Now with the two cargo trays kind of out of here, we're going to go ahead and take off this panel as well as this one here. We can kind of set these aside. Now we're also going to pull off our driver's side plastic panels here. Now this one should come up fairly easy, and just kind of, there's some clips underneath here. You're just going to kind of pull up and those should pop out. So we're going to go ahead and set these aside as well. And the reason we're taking off this driver's side is to actually gain access to be able to pull up our scuff panel here, and that's going to allow us to pull the actual interior panels back to get to our plug. So with both of those plastic cubbies kind of removed, we can get our scuff panel off, and the best way to do that is just kind of grab underneath it and just kind of pull straight up, and you'll kind of work your way over here. It should kind of start releasing, and then we'll just work our way up here, and then we can set this aside. So with that scuff panel removed, we're going to see that there's going to be a plastic push pin right here holding the plastic for our actual cargo little side panel here. So to get this out, you're going to want to use a small flathead screwdriver, and you're going to want to pry on that center one. Sometimes it helps to just kind of put a twisting motion like that, and that should come out. Now, this does bring me to a good point of holding on to all the hardware. There shouldn't be a whole heck of a lot here, but you're going to want to have it in an organized spot. That way, when you put everything back, you'll have all the pieces you need. So now to pull this back, there's actually going to be two hooks that we'll have to kind of attack, and that way we can get access to this. This top one, pretty easy. You just flip that up, and there's going to be a 10mm right there, so we can remove that. This one down here, going to be a little bit different. You're going to want to pull that hook down, and this plastic portion here, mine's popping out, but you'll want to take a flathead screwdriver and just kind of pry at the top, and that should allow this to pop down, and that also gives us another 10mm. So I'm gonna go grab my ratchet and we can get these off. All right, so we'll just get these 10s off. Now this whole thing will come out with it, so just hold on to all of it. We can set this aside. Go ahead and do this one as well. Now this plastic center section may stay in there, and that's okay. That'll be fine because this is what's actually holding it in place. So go ahead and set this aside as well. Now before we peel this back, I want to actually kind of give you the lowdown on the actual wiring harness. That way you know what you're looking for. This plug here is great because it's going to plug into your factory plug. It should look similar to this. So that's really what we're going to be looking for when we go in there. We also have our fuse holder here. We'll be putting a fuse in that. Now this is our module, and this is kind of the brains of the operation that's going to protect our vehicle from any backfeed on the trailer. So that's going to make sure that it doesn't fry any of your OEM electronics on your vehicle if you have a short on your trailer. And then finally, you have your 4-pole. Now, again, this is kind of a decision that you can make. We're going to be installing this one with a bracket, and it'll live outside the vehicle, but you may keep yours inside the vehicle for when you need it. It's kind of up to you. But the main thing we're looking for right now is a plug that looks like this. So we'll start by just kind of peeling this back from the weather stripping, and you want to make sure that you're not prying too terribly hard on this because you don't want this to bend. But we're going to kind of work this back a little bit, and there may be some clips along the way. Just like that. And that kind of opens this up for me to kind of continue on here. So just kind of take your hands and kind of work your way along. You're going to find some clips along the way, and then as I pop that, there's our plastic. So it's actually got a little clip there. So if that comes out, set that aside for later. And then I'm just lightly putting pressure here. You're going to see that it's kind of making contact with this plastic and the jack, but we should be able to get enough access here to where we can reveal the plug. So I'm going to kind of work on this here and see if I can't access it. And I am going to go ahead and remove our jack just by rotating this little T-handle counterclockwise, and that's just going to gain us a little bit more clearance while doing this and give us a little more area to see what we're doing. So once that's loose, we'll just set this aside. I'm going to actually remove our plastic piece here as well, and that way I can really peel this back and give you guys a better insight as to what we're looking for. Now, you may or may not have to actually remove yours, but this is going to help you guys be able to see it. Now, it's got little plastic clips, so just kind of pry up on those. Now, be careful because they can kind of break, so just kind of finding where those plugs are and kind of pulling up on those sections. And this one actually stayed in the chassis here, and it just slides in, which is fine, but when we put it back, we'll just make sure that we slide that back in before pressing it down. And up here you can see this plastic it's all kind of attached to this liner here, so just prying this back nice and slow. We're going to try to kind of put this gap here over where the jack was mounted up, and that's going to gain us that little bit of extra space. So prying this back, let's take a look for our plug. And right up in here, it's going to be kind of right where the wheel well is. You're going to see an open white plug up there, and that is where we are going to plug in our harness. So now, since it is kind of tucked back there, and we have a little bit of room with our plug to be able to attach in there, but just to make it easier, I'm going to actually take our fuse that's supplied in the kit, and we're just going to put that in our fuse holder. Let's make sure it's slotted in there correctly, and a little pressure should push that in. And then we'll just put our cap on top. So now grab your end, and we're just going to plug this in. It's going to be kind of a squeeze here, so your hands might get a little tight, but I can reach back in there and kind of get a clear view through kind of where the seatbelt mechanism is. If you look down, you'll be able to see it. So let's just go ahead and slot that in. It can only go in one direction, so that makes it kind of easy. So now we'll just go ahead, push that in, make sure it's clipped, and I give it just a little tug just to make sure that it's securely in there. So now we need to find a good spot to mount up our module, and it does come with a double-sided tape in the kit, but I put the tape on there and I wasn't particularly happy with how it was sticking to things, so I've actually grabbed another extra one that I've had lying around here. If you have a little bit of hook and loop or some other double-sided tape, I kind of recommend using that, as it's going to be a little bit better hold than the factory one. But I'm also going to zip tie it in place, and that way over time it's not going to be rattling around when your speakers are bumping, or if you're just hitting some bumps in the car, it's not going to hear some clanging in the back. So we'll go ahead and I'll stick this on and then zip tie it up, and I'll show you how I mounted it. So I put the double-sided tape on the back, and then there's actually a hole down here, and I used a large zip tie and wrapped around the wires, cinching that up down there. And then I also wrapped a zip tie around our wires up top, and I went to this factory wire here, so this thing is nice and secure. So I'm going to go ahead and clip off these little ends of the zip ties, and we have our module mounted up. Now, this is the part where essentially you're ready to use this, and if you are going to keep this inside of your vehicle, you'll basically just kind of tuck this down, and it can live in that plastic panel that we pulled out earlier, and whenever you need to use it, you can simply drape it outside of your vehicle, and the weather stripping here is going to allow it to actually have space without crunching it down. Just make sure that you are avoiding where the latch is, and that way you can hook up to your trailer. But our neighbor here is actually planning on running this down and mounting it up with a bracket. So there's a few different ways that you can run it down. There's actually a grommet underneath the spare tire. This one has the subwoofer in the tire, and honestly, I think it's going to be a little bit easier to use a grommet that's right here. So peeling this back, so here in the same panel that we've been working in, there's going to be a grommet with some wires passing through, and that's going to be wide enough when we pull that grommet out to pass our 4-pole down, and then we can kind of just make a small splice, allowing the 4-pole wires to live in there, and that way we can route it down and to our hitch pretty easily without having to run it across the vehicle. So I'm just going to peel this grommet out, and you're just going to kind of pry with your fingers, and that should reveal it here. This is going to allow us to pass our 4-pole in and down. So just go ahead and you can feed that in, push all the slack through, and it should come out on the underside of the vehicle. Now it's going to come out from the side, and it might be hard to see until you pass a little bit more, but once you kind of get the rest of a little more slack pushed through, you'll be able to kind of just pull the rest of the slack through. So we have our 4-pole pass through here, but we're going to want to make sure that this grommet actually goes back into the hole that it is, and that way it prevents water from getting inside the vehicle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a utility knife and make a slit here and just kind of cut out a small hole for these wires to live in, and that way we can get the grommet back in place. Then I'll go back with a little black silicone to fill that back up so it's all sealed up. Now do be careful because there is this wire here, so I suggest kind of going where the wire is and cutting out. That way you're not going to puncture these wires. So with that little slit made, I was able to kind of just pass those wires in and get our grommet back in. Now before I put any silicone in this, I'm going to actually make sure that I run all my wires. That way any tension doesn't cause that to kind of blob around. We want a nice secure fit. So I'm going to make sure we get our 4-pole mounted up first. So now we have our 4-pole that should be hanging down. We're going to just route this along the underside of the bumper and potentially using the hitch as well. And we're just going to zip tie it every so often, and that way we can make our way to where we have our 4-pole here. Now there's a few different ways you can do this. One of them that you'll see sometimes common is the dust cap that goes over the 4-pole will actually work as a way to attach this. So you can actually kind of just allow this to kind of hang here. Our neighbor is actually going to be using a bracket, and that way it's going to be permanently kind of mounted here. It's kind of up to you. It depends on how much you tow. I think a permanent bracket for someone that tows often makes a lot of sense. That way you don't have to drape that wire. But again, it's completely up to you and how you want to do it. But I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get this wire run over, and then I'll get my bracket set up and show you how that looks. So as far as rounding the 4-pole, it's pretty easy. I went over the factory bumper beam supports, and I kind of just used a few factory points to just zip tie that up. That way it's not going to get loose over time. And then I actually had a little bit of extra wire, so I kind of looped it around before putting it on our bracket. Now, the kit does not come with these brackets. It's something that you can pick up here. And again, this is going to be maybe a little bit more for your permanent. It is a permanent mount, so maybe for you people that tow a little bit more than often, that way you don't have to pull it out of your car. It does look pretty clean overall, but it's completely up to you. So we just went ahead, we got that zipped up to the hitch itself, and here we have our 4-pole plug. So really all that's left to do is test it out and make sure it's working. In order to test this wiring, we're going to be using a 4-pole tester, and we have these available here at eTrailer, and these are really nice because it'll keep it specific to the vehicle. The other way that you can test it is actually hooking it up to your trailer, but if your trailer has any wiring issues, it could cause a false negative to the wiring on your vehicle. So this will keep it specific, and we'll know that it's just our car. So I'm going to go ahead, plug this in, and then I'm going to run through the light signals, and we should be able to see these light up. So now I'm just going to run through my light sequence, and that first we're going to start off with our running lights. Next we're going to do our left turn signal, our right turn signal, and then finally our brakes. So with all of our wiring working properly, all we really have to do is go back and button up the rest of our interior in the reverse order that we took it out, and then we're ready to hook up to our trailer and get to towing. And that was a look and installation of the Curt trailer wiring harness on a 2018 Mazda CX-9. Thanks for watching.